What is up, everybody? You are not seeing things. This is a new episode of the framework. It's been about a month since I've been able to get on here. So thank you, Mike, and thank you to everybody who's tuning in. I know it's been a while, so we're just kind of here to catch up, man.
Yeah, it's been a month already. Already
Yeah.
the end of July. I'm not thinking about that though.
Yeah, I mean, I had a few episodes, like some training stuff that I've been recording, and like I've been doing things on the back end uh, with work and then training and then with the baby on the way. So it's nice to kind of come back in, put the blinders on, and have some time to record.
We should do a training video one time too. I was just thinking about that.
We should, you say?
Like how many times have people really done like little podcasts where it's like we're doing a podcast and training at the same time? It could be something that's like new. Just we'll cut out the heavy breathing.
I feel like that's just like a standard training video now. Like I feel like people are. Well, the only thing that you and I would really line up on is what, either like an arm day or back.
I mean, honestly, I do a lot of accessory work, especially since I'm so far out from my next meet. Like I do my like specificity on my training is pretty like it's there obviously, but like today it's my first week of my new block. I literally did my second squat session and my second bench session in like 20 minutes. And then I would do like accessory work afterwards. So
this is like a new split. We say split, but like a new
yeah.
block. So what is it?
Yeah, my
What
training
made
block.
you? Yeah, go ahead.
No, you're good, man.
I was gonna say, like, what made you decide to change up your training? Was this a coach decision? Was it your decision? Like, were you like coming out of your meet? Like, so like tell me how you
Yeah.
kind of orchestrated this.
Yeah, I mean, obviously traditional like bodybuilding training, like you're not really changing things up too much. You're kind of like focusing on specific movements and then just progressive overload through whatever means over time. Versus where powerlifting training, I mean, don't get me wrong, it has a very similar concept. It's a wave of progressions, like that's the goal. But it's undulated. So like things will change within like 4 to 6 week blocks. So you'll have little micro focuses that you'll focus on within a 4 to 6 week period, like within a specific rep range, whether that's like motor pattern adjustments, getting stronger on specific variations. And then essentially you really just focus on getting stronger within like that specific micro block or micro cycle over, and then you kind of just compile those small progressions up, and then there's the macro cycle, which is the whole plan. So this way at the end of a macro cycle, ideally you're going into a meet, or you're looking at like yearly progression. So it's still the same concept. It's just in terms of undulation, like rep ranges will change, intensity and volume will change depending on where you're at in a meet. So this way you're not just constantly beating yourself into the ground. So that's really it. So my training blocks usually last anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. First week being
Wow.
pretty standard, pretty light.
So every 4 to 6 weeks, like, are you changing up the days that you train? Are you changing up, like, I know this might sound like a silly question, but like, you guys aren't doing incline benching or dumbbells versus flat bench or, throwing in cable flies, for working sets. So like, how do you, like, from a bodybuilding perspective, you basically don't, what's the saying? Don't fix what isn't broken. So it's like, hey, whatever you decide to move into your off season with, and whatever progressions you make, and you log all your stuff, which is what we all do. That should be universal for anybody who lifts. And then you get to your contest prep, and it's like, okay, this is going to stay the same, but here's how it's going to be modified a little bit. You never go from like, oh, I was training 5 days a week, back twice a week, one leg session, to, okay, we're going to split legs, we're going to add a chest day, and we're going to add an arm day, and we're going to move to 6 days. Like that, you would never see that. So how, like, for 4 to 6 weeks, it sounds like, and maybe I'm just ignorant to it or just, unknowing, like, why would you, if you're, for example, let's say, and this is just how I would envision it, like, let's say your weakest lift is your bench.
Yes.
So I would want, like, well, meets on what, Friday, Saturday, mostly Saturdays. Like just a meet, like when would a normal meet?
Oh yeah, typically, yeah, unless it's like a major meet, it's always on like a Saturday or a Sunday.
Okay, so let's say it's Saturday. Like if your weakest lift is a bench, I would assume you would bench on Thursdays, so that as you get closer to the show or the meet, okay, this I know is going to be my last lift, so I'll know where I'm at on Thursday leading up to Saturday. And again, that may be a very ignorant thing. Maybe I'm totally wrong, but whatever. So how do you determine what days you're hitting what? And if you're changing that up every 4 to 6 weeks, are you losing that consistency? Like when you change up, let's say you've been doing bench every Thursday. Now after 6 weeks, you change your block up, and now you're doing it on Mondays. Like,
Yeah.
isn't there overlap there? Like, isn't that affecting from one to the other? And doesn't that kind of screw you
Yeah.
up for weeks at a time?
I mean, not as much change happens as you'd think. I guess I should clarify in terms of like adjustments, like the actual layout of your training cycle. I mean, everything's very individualized. So the answer like everybody's going to give is it depends. But I have my lifts laid out in a way to where there's not a lot of fatigue carryover to where like my primary, like heavier sessions are not getting affected by like my secondary and tertiary, like second and third session. So essentially, the benefit of like the secondary sessions and third sessions are for like technique refinement and priming you essentially for your primary session. So like when I'm changing things up, like let's say if after 5 weeks, right? My layout of everything is staying the same. My bench days are staying the same. My deadlift days are staying the same. My squat days are staying the same. It's a very, very small adjustment. So like let's say my primary days are I'm doing top sets of 4. So then my next block will be top sets of like 2 to 3. And then it'll go into like usually I usually won't hit singles unless I'm prepping for a meet, but it'll really just kind of be a small adjustment that way. But like the actual layout of everything stays exactly the same. It's very, very small adjustments. There's been times where like I'll go through a next training block and like honestly not much will change. Really the only thing that's changing is I'm going from hitting like if you're familiar with like RPE and like reps in reserve
Yeah,
and
yeah,
things
yeah.
like that. So like I'll essentially get
The disrespect, disrespect.
never disrespect. We love each other.
That's
Um
how I. That's how I did my whole. That's how my training was mapped out for
yeah.
my whole contest prep.
And honestly, even with bodybuilding training, it's just like it'll be a similar concept, just your training cycles may be a lot longer. Like when you get to the point where you're at the end of your training cycle and you're hitting like RPE nines or like, hitting like true like 2 reps, 1 to 2 reps in reserve, which first off, people don't actually realize how hard that is. Like how many times you see people saying, hey, this was like a 2 RAR, like an 8 to 9 RPE, and you're like, probably could have had like 4 more reps in that, honestly. But that's not for this conversation. But I'll essentially sometimes keep everything the same. Just when I'm hitting that like burnout period of like, essentially hitting those top RPEs, then the next week will be could be the same concept, just essentially like tapering down, intensity and volume slightly and kind of rinse and repeat. So it's not always changing in terms of like the layout and the reps and all that stuff. It's essentially a rinse and repeat in terms of intensity and volume. And
So
that'll just
what does your days look like right now? Like, are they set like every Monday? What does it look like right now?
Yeah, I mean, obviously a little bit more flexibility right now in the home life. But right now my day one is my primary squat and bench day. And then my day two is my primary deadlift day. And then my day three is my secondary squat day and my tertiary or my third bench day, which is essentially like a main variation. So it's flat bench, but I'm doing like Larson presses, which is essentially like a variation of like feet up bench presses. So it's mainly pec. And then my fourth day is my secondary deadlift day. Again, a variation of deadlifts, not regular comp deadlifts. And then my primer bench day, which is essentially just a very low intensity way of getting my body used to hitting my day one, getting everything ready for my primary bench day. So that honestly for me stays the same pretty much year round. The only thing that will change is maybe like after 3, 4, 5 blocks, we'll change up some variations. But really, like I said, it's a rinse and repeat in terms of intensity and volume. That's really what's changing. You're not changing everything. So hopefully that kind of brings some clarification.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'll just kind of go into
Yeah.
what I'm doing too. I mean, we're both essentially in our quote unquote off season. So
Yeah.
when I was in prep, I was doing 3 days on, 1 day off, 3 days on, 1 day off consistently. Pull, push legs off, pull, push legs off. It's just a lot. It was just a lot of training in one session. Like I was in the gym for like essentially 90 minutes between, warm ups, the physical training aspect, and then whether it be cardio or not. Obviously if it was cardio, I was in there for what felt like hours.
Yep.
So I kind of modified it. I had an off-season plan going into it. Made some personal life changes, so I'm on my own during this off season, and it's not ideal. I guess I'll kind of announce it here from, our 40 people who are going to watch this.
Yeah,
That I am looking for an off season coach, somebody that I can. I'm tired of having. Now I've only had 3 coaches, and I've competed 7 times now, 6 times, 6 or 7 times. And I think the worst thing is having to hit that reset button. And I don't know how it is with powerlifting. Like everybody, I always look at it as just another sport, right? Like when you hire a new coach from in the NFL, like they're going to come in, they want their scheme, their players, this, that, and the other, their way is right, and so on and so forth. And I've had coaches where I am all in. I fully buy into their methods, their training, their, whether it's macros or templates or whatever the case may be, the diet. And when I come out of it, it's usually like, okay, like what's next? And it's like, oh, well, take this plan, add a few more grams of fat, add a few more carbs, and we'll reassess. And I know that is obviously how you're supposed to do it. But I'm just like, man, like I just love feeling like a bodybuilder, and I love the lifestyle, and I love eating the same 5 or 6 meals every day and stuff like that. So the last thing I want to do is have a killer off season, which I really feel like I've been having, and then finding a coach and hitting the reset button into a prep. So I'm looking for a coach right now. I've had a few different people that I've talked to, and I'm a very needy person. I think at this point, and I'm sure you could say the same. I mean, you're kind of at the point now where with powerlifting, you can coach yourself. I do it more from an accountability, aspect, but, I want somebody that I could build a proper off season with, so that when we come into contest prep, late next year, they know exactly what to look for, and what variables and what knobs to turn. So, right now I'm working on set days of training. So I'm gonna pull up my phone here so I know exactly what I'm looking at. So, right now, 6 meals a day. We have pull, push, legs off on Tuesdays. Wednesday is pull, push, and then off again on Fridays. So I'm only doing biceps and triceps 2 days a week. Those pull B and push B is like back and traps, and then it's chest and delts. So like this morning I did chest and delts. I'll have off tomorrow, and then it'll be back and biceps, shoulders, triceps, full legs, off again, rinse and repeat. So every Tuesday and Friday is an off day. That's where I get my cheat meals in, and all the fun stuff. So just trying to find the consistency that me, like I just need routine. I need accountability, and I know that might sound like a weak mindset, but
no,
I always love the analogy, and I always bring it back to sports. It's like Tom Brady had a quarterback coach. Ronnie Coleman had a coach. The best people in their sports have people that not only do they have coaches and people that they rely on, but people they've worked with for years. And I can't say that I've had that. Like I have not had a coach that I've worked with for long periods of time. The coach I worked with the longest was Pat Greco at Exile Fitness, Exile Training. And we worked together for about 2.5 years. So we had contest prep, off season, contest prep, off season, and then he moved and whatever happened. So that was essentially, in my opinion, and from the pictures that you look back on and my placings and stuff, those were my best showings. And so it's not. I am looking. I need somebody that I can check in with. Do you coach yourself? Do you have a coach? Do you have? I don't know how like the difference between like a bodybuilding check-in is obviously weekly or bi-weekly with photos going through your poses. How does a power lifter, quote unquote, check in?
Not very different than you'd think with a bodybuilder. I mean, the biggest difference I would say is like as we're getting closer to a meet, similar to a bodybuilder, is like you're almost checking in daily, because like you need to make sure that like hey, as you're getting closer to meet, you need to start monitoring like fatigue trends. Like if I start like, hey, these specific training sessions are consistently feeling like shit, and like these training sessions are consistently feeling good, you need
so the exact same. Yeah,
you need that objective data, because like kind of similar to bodybuilding, I mean, the kind of nuanced expectation of like there's a specific peak, like even with bodybuilding, like I don't like when people say like, hey, like I need to peak for 8 a.m. Saturday, as if like your body knows like, here's 8 a.m. We know we need to. It's a range, so like it's kind of similar with that. You need to make sure that like fatigue is dropped and performance is there like on a specific time frame. So you need to know those different things and get the data on those. So it's still like I do have a coach. Again, it's an accountability thing, and also you're your own worst critic. So I
100%.
tend to make really stupid decisions when I coach myself. So it's nice to like have someone who is very well versed and can kind of just take that guesswork out of it. So like I'll essentially send him training videos almost every session. We talk almost every single day. But we have our big check-ins like once a week. We don't have big check-ins until I'm like prepping for a meet. So
And
similar.
I know that you guys like record your lifts. I mean, we all do
Yeah.
that now.
Mhm.
Do you like, is that your check-in, or are there times where like your coach is local
Yeah.
enough to where he can come and watch you lift and make critiques there on the spot like he would at on the day of the meet?
He's online, so we don't get the
Okay.
ability to really meet in person. When I go to bigger meets, like I'll be at like nationals this year in September, and we'll be at the Arnold next year. It's like those bigger meets, I'm able to see him in person because he has a lot of clients and who are competing at the bigger meets, so he'll be there to handle them. But I would say like the in the off season, our check-ins really aren't that big because we're talking almost on a daily basis. So like if we were to have a check-in on like a Saturday or a Sunday, it's really like I can't be like, "Hey, you didn't talk to me all week, so here's what happened." It's kinda like, "Hey, I've been talking to you the last, like, 4 or 5 days." So, like, it's kinda just like a last minute, like, "Hey, here's how I'm feeling currently. Here's how I just felt mentally going into this week," because there's really not much else data to talk about. But like I said, similar to bodybuilding, most people just not just the accountability part, it's just because we're all super neurotic. So we just make really stupid decisions when we coach ourselves, like in terms of
100%.
how hard we push things. I do coach people. I'm building alongside, Emily's business. So like we don't do the same thing. We work alongside each other. So it's been really cool experience doing that. But yeah, I have
I
my own
love
coach.
that.
Like I said, I'm very stupid when it comes to my own training.
So you had mentioned
Yeah.
September and the Arnold next year. Is that kind of those are your next showings? That's when you're gonna compete
One
again?
day I'll be competing at those meets. The Since the barrier of entry of both of these sports is so low, which I think is a beautiful thing because let's face it, not many of us are able to get into the NFL and the NBA and sports like that. So I think it's really cool that like these sports exist. So like even if you never get past the local level, you have an ability to still be competitive in something. But no, Emily's doing nationals. Um, I coach her, so obviously I'll be there with her. She's already qualified for the Arnold, so she might be doing that, but I'm going to be going anyway just because I could potentially be having some other athletes that are doing it.
Cool.
It's really cool because powerlifting now has, well, the federation I compete in now has a presence at the Olympia. So this is the first year that they're going to have a meet at the Olympia. So that's not this year, but like probably next year, I'll have some involvement in with athletes. I know Emily's looking at that next year. And then the whole pro circuit in my sport has been blowing up. My coach actually runs the pro circuit in the
Oh, that's
USAPL.
awesome.
He's the director of that. So I'll be there kind of just working and showing face and shaking hands, kissing base.
When is your next meet? That's the question.
My next meet,
Ideally, give me a time frame.
yeah, November, December, probably December.
Cool.
And
Do
then,
you like,
yeah,
is that just a time of year that works best for you? Like when I
mhm,
plan my competitions now and I have for the last couple of years, it's like I really try to find that balance with life. I mean, especially with the baby on the way and Lex's lifestyle and my lifestyle. Like
yeah, man,
my wife works 70 hours a week. So like the last thing I want to do is be, balls deep in a contest prep, and my wife wants to go to dinner and I'm not available. So I think that prepping like January through like April, May timeframe has really been the best for me, like those 14 to 18 weeks.
yeah,
Um, because early on, like you think February is like when you're getting those weekly cheat meals and stuff like that and refeeds. And we have, our anniversary,
yeah,
Valentine's Day, her
yep,
birthday, like, and then as we get into like kind of March and April where those things stop, like we don't really have a lot planned or anything
yeah,
that goes on. So, January we come home from our, yearly annual vacation and then it's into a contest prep. So we have that real week together. And now we're going to have Declan with us that we're already planning on bringing him to that January vacation. So I just think like that's, late winter, early spring is the best time frame for me and my lifestyle and my
yeah.
family. So do you ever kind of plan your meets around like, hey, what's not just going to be best for me and how my off season going, but what's best for like my family?
I mean, definitely. I mean, I feel like most people don't look at the macro picture of things. They kind of just like decide on a whim. And
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, if this was 10 years ago for us both, we probably could.
Oh yeah.
But ideally, I plan things around obviously like Luna's birthday is in January, you have the holidays, and not that I'm using the holidays as an excuse. I just would rather not like, I mean, granted,
I did it and it was tough, man. I like,
it's hard, and, like, granted, the dieting aspect is still there with powerlifting because it's a weight class sport, and, like, you're still, like, doing things to make sure that you're staying around your weight class. It's not obviously as strict as bodybuilding, but it's still, like, I don't wanna have to worry about being around my weight range and, like, having because when you're peaking for me, especially those last couple blocks, like, some of your training sessions can last, like, 2, 3 hours, and, like, not every session, your primary sessions,
yeah,
and I just don't wanna have to worry about, like, hey, something happened today. I still have to figure out when I'm going to get this like 2.5 hour training session. And like, I'm not at that, I'm humble enough to know where I am in the sport. So I don't need to be, it's not my source of income, but also like plan those things out that way. But also like my coaching has like started growing too. So like I focus more on like what big meets like my athletes are doing. Especially with Emily, like we travel a lot now.
awesome. I love that. Yeah, I
So,
see that all the time.
hey man, we'll have to talk a separate thing about her. She's a freaking workhorse, God bless.
Yeah, I see it, man. I see it.
I love it. But but yeah, like I focus on like obviously she's doing nationals and like I focus on a lot of these bigger meets. Like obviously I'm not gonna put myself in a position where I'm taking away from my athletes
Yeah.
when I'm not doing that. So that's kind of how I base it. That's why like December works best for me. And then my big meet next year is gonna be States, which is like the biggest meet in New Jersey. That'll be like somewhere around like the April, March, June area. It kind of varies depending on the schedule. So
That's
yeah.
awesome, dude. That's awesome. I was as you were talking, like I noticed that how like prominent my scar is today. And like one thing that people always like will tell me, like, so if I this is obviously just straight scar tissue right here.
Uh-huh.
And I was downstairs lifting and I like rubbed my face because it does get itchy. And like I'll rub my face and it'll be so pronounced for the rest of the day. And you could just tell like that's the first thing people look at when I talk to them now, because as I'm getting older and my fucking wrinkles and shit, like that's like the first thing that people see. And they're like, "Did you get punched in the face?" I'm like, "Yeah, 12 years ago." Like, and it just never goes away now. So I'm sitting here like talking and I'm like, people are gonna think I got beat up, like looking at it while we talking. Do you have
Yeah,
any scars, anything that like stands out?
not like on my face, just on my foot. What? No, nothing inappropriate. Nothing. Nothing inappropriate. It's like here, let me show you.
Yeah.
No, I don't know if you remember last year when I broke part of my foot by
Oh
dropping
my
it.
God. Yeah.
Yeah, I dropped a 20 kilo, which is a 44-pound plate directly on the front of my foot from like shoulder level, like slipped
Oh,
out of my hand and inertia. Um,
amateur.
yeah,
That
I
damn
mean,
gravity.
dude, I mean, obviously it shattered my nail, it shattered the whole toe and like the
Oh
ball
yeah.
of the foot. I almost had to have surgery. Did not have to have surgery, luckily, but the whole front of my toe, not to be graphic, like split open and like
Whew,
tendon was sticking out. So I have a pretty
good.
gnarly scar there. I'll have to show you. But that's really it. Knock on wood, I haven't had anything. But one thing you could do though is you could still have that cliched like you should see the other guy.
Well, yeah, we could still say that, but it's been so long that, you know,
I don't
who
even
knows?
notice. I've known you for over 10 years. I honestly like I
Well, it's
never.
also like I just have like the sunlight, just it's just perfect right now.
Yeah,
Like you could see exactly where the scarring was, like to a T. It's
yeah,
not like it's not like I said, unless I rub my face, you wouldn't,
yeah, and it
like you
kind of
said, you
brings it
wouldn't
more
really
to light.
tell. But then also like genetics, like I just have like these things under my eyes. But
Yeah.
anyway, man, hey, great way to wrap it up. Talked about, you know, where we're at in life, where we're at with training, off season splits, our approach to off season,
Yep.
and then just kind of scars. Dude, thank you for scheduling this in. I know I had some free time today, so this was awesome. Hopefully we can get back to that weekly schedule.
Hmm.
I know people have been asking about this episode. They've been asking about the line and the frame, the physique episodes with Todd. So, you know, we're trying to get back to some weekly sessions. So I appreciate you. I appreciate everybody for stopping by and watching. You know, obviously all the cliche stuff like share, subscribe, watch some of our old episodes to get some insight on, you know, what kind of led us up to here. Hey man, thanks for stopping by.
Always.
Thank you guys for stopping by the framework.